Who's going to make the college football playoffs? Like we don't even bring that up anymore. Like,
or is it because it's already 3/4 filled out?
So
I mean, I think that's part of the problem too. You can say all you want to about expand or don't expand, but I think the fact that right now we could probably pretty accurately predict at least 2, if not 3 of those 4 teams. That's part of your problem in a way, is that it's such a small field that there's no room for any fun of, hey, what if Texas Tech went on a run? We all just start laughing right now. We know they have zero chance. They have zero chance of making the playoff this year, right? And part of that's because they're not going to go undefeated. I mean, they're just not. And you can't really change that. But the other part of it is that even if they were to only lose a game, we know they're not getting in because, Ohio State at 1 loss would get in before they would, or Michigan at 1 loss would get in before they would, or so on and so forth. That there's even, a 1-loss team that's eligible to get in. And so I understand why other leagues want to carve out as many spots as they can in the future for themselves. It makes all the sense. You got to worry about you. But I do think the 4-team field, as much as people want to argue about, well, it would just be blowouts if we had 8 teams, or it would just be blowouts if we had 12 teams. What's different? It's just that you're allowing more teams to take part, thus going all the way back to the beginning of the show. And how can schools like Baylor eventually get to certain levels? Well, by being in big-time games and big-time atmospheres and being in playoffs and doing all that. But right now, it's basically impossible for them to get there if they don't go unbeaten. So, therefore, you have the same 4 for the most part, with a Washington occasionally popping their head in, or an Oregon, or last year a Cincinnati. And that's great. And you see how much that mattered at the time. Like, that mattered to those schools. And so it's imperative that Cincinnati, unlike those others that I just mentioned, keep up that momentum. But that was game changer for their program, just simply being in it. And that's why I think, the expanded field ultimately would be good for college football, because it gives more teams that have no shot right now, basically, at least that rub to go on the way of becoming a new blood or a blue blood, 20 years from now or whatever. But you got to have those opportunities. And right now the opportunities are very few and far between.
Well, also, and it wouldn't be immediate, but over the long term, if you have an 8, 12, or 16 team playoff, the recruiting fire hose to certain places will trickle out a little bit to other places, because, sometimes you got guys like, look, I'm going to go to Georgia because it's my goal to play in the CFP, and I know that they've got a great shot at doing it. Whereas where you can be like, I'd like to go to Ole Miss, but like they really have I'm talking about SEC schools here. So, but you could have that. You could have recruiting trickle change up because there will be more opportunity for that. So you don't have to just go to Ohio State and Alabama and all those other places. You can maybe go to some other schools because you reasonably have a shot, because right now, a coach can have a 5-star guy in there who's interested in his school, who's coming off an 8-4 year, and he's like, listen, we need you to get a run at the college football playoff. Well, if I'm not an idiot, I can be like, well, you've never been there anyway. Well, who's letting you in? The committee probably stresses out more when Ohio State loses 2 games than when somebody else goes undefeated, just because they're like, well, now we have to do some work here. Because when the season starts right now, they'll be like, all right, guys, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, wild card from, another league. Yeah, okay. Georgia, we're good.
A wild card from the Big 12, asterisk if it's Oklahoma or Texas. Wild card from the Pac-12 if it's somebody. That's kind of the way it feels. That's how it feels set up. And that's I don't see how that's really doing much favor to college football as a whole, but I don't think a lot of what's going on is supposed to improve college football as a whole. I'll circle back again to like 2.5 hours ago. All these rules you see being made are basically being made for the same schools that are already benefiting the most. And so, parity works well for the NFL, but screw that in college football. We don't want any of that. We're doing everything we can to eliminate even what little parity there is almost, right? I mean, that's kind of what it feels like, at least, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. I do know that it's got people, like myself, wondering just what exactly the game looks like and what it resembles in 5-10 years versus what it is right now. Not to say that it's not in need. It's obviously in need of changes, but just like how far do you take this exclusivity and what that potentially looks like in this money gap will be very interesting, and that's what we're all waiting to see. And that's why when Kevin Warren gets up there and doesn't close the door on expansion, but instead basically says in so many ways that they're going to keep expanding. You know, no details provided, but that they're very much sounding like they're leaning in that direction. That it leads to all sorts of possibilities and wonders about what this all could look like soon.
For those in the chat, I want to ask you a question, and you give us your opinion. Make it, you know, again, well, you only can do so much anyway. Do you like the direction of where college football is headed when it comes to the super-type conferences? Yes or no, and why? If you're a fan of anybody in those conferences or of those conferences, the answer is probably yes. And if that's the case, just be honest about it. If you're not, if you're a fan of schools that are a part of other conferences that might be left out, then tell us that. Just curious about that. Do you like the direction of not college athletics, not with the NIL, not with the transfer portal, not with that, but the direction of college football and what might be the future?
But that's the thing is, like, as much as we talk about it, it's the key word you just said, it's might. Like, nothing's changed yet. A couple schools are moving, and a couple of others have now decided to move too. But, you know, for all the threat of two big conferences, I mean, yeah, we've seen some evidence they're moving in that direction, but it's not inevitable necessarily.
I do think that the playoff expansion talk popping back up with the Big Ten might be a result is that, you know, they know that they might try to pull this Super 2 thing, but there's going to be violent pushback from the rest.
Yeah.
So why not just go ahead and expand the playoff and make sure the rules benefit you anyway, so you can get 3 teams, maybe 4 in, if you're, you know, one of those years, and then
the
you
larger
really got
the
what
number,
you wanted.
the more that those two conferences will get in. Correct?
Yeah. So if there's 12, you know, you can guarantee there's probably going to be at least 5 between those 2 leagues most years. If you go to the top 12 teams, you know, all that, you know, take out their little bogus, who's going to be automatic qualifiers. Well, if you're you know.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? Because that's something that's kind of got me thinking, that automatic qualifiers, that if you win a conference championship game, you shouldn't get in the conference, you shouldn't get in the national title game. Someone tell me why.
Because you're 7-5 and you win a bad conference and you're not deserving of a shot at the national title.
Yeah.
Well, then you get drilled in the first round, but you have to.
I'm just telling you the reason we asked for it.
The way the playoff, they had it set up to where you're taking the top 5 highest ranked conference champion, top 6 highest ranked conference champions. When is that ever not going to be the Big Ten? Like, what contingency are they worried about where they're not going to be one of the top 6 highest
They're
ranked?
not. That's why they can say it. That's why the SEC
But no,
can
we
say
have
it.
to have to make sure that we're automatic because of the 1 year that you might fall on your ass. No.
Isn't strength of conferences, now the SEC's had a dominant run for a decade and a half. There was once where the Pac-12 was amazing. There was once when the Big 8 was amazing. There was once when the Big 12 was pretty damn good. That's still kind of – it used to be cyclical. Now it's not because of the fact the SEC has been just hammering people almost every year, save Clemson. I don't understand, other than the obvious of money, if you win a conference championship, you should be included in the playoff. And if it's a 7-5 team – it's a 7-5 team. Maybe 3 of those losses happened against 3 damn good non-conference teams, or maybe they lost to just really good teams. 7-5 teams that win a conference championship can be better than a team that's 10-2 who didn't play anybody.
I bet you if they were a 7-5 of the SEC, we'd hear nothing but how much their schedule was tough and what a tough road they had to hoe and all that propaganda.
Which is why I don't understand why they're against the automatic qualifier.
Well, I think they just want to set it up more favorably for themselves.
Sure they do. Everybody does.
The Big Ten is not against the automatic qualifier. They're for it.
No, I saw that from Kevin Warren.
But if you're the SEC or the Big Ten and you want as many teams in, well, if it's only an 8-team playoff and there's automatic qualifiers, well, then you're getting like 2 teams in. You feel like you can get 4 if it's a large enough pool. Does that make sense to you?
No, that does.
It's about getting as many opportunities. So that's why, let's do a 6-team playoff and everybody gets automatic qualifier. Well, then you're getting less teams in the SEC than you did before.
Well, it's not going to be 6, but give me, let's say
that's
8.
my point. They're trying to jockey for as much space as they can get. Okay, how much more space can you get than, let's say, Super 2, 4 on this side, 4 on this side from 2 conferences. They go play, there's their playoff, boom, there's your national champion. Now, I wouldn't consider it the national champion, but they would and others would. But if you're going to do it a real national, playoff, then that's where the whole argument. That's why there's been an argument for years and years and years is, do you do 4? Do you do 6? Do you do 8? Do you do AQs? Do you do non-AQs? Where does the non-Power 5 come into play?
If you're worried about filling up the slots, and I get that, you want your conference to have more opportunities than anyone else, or at least have more opportunities, then why the hell play the regular season? Go straight to the playoff. I mean, why are we playing non-conference games? Why are we playing conference games? Why are we playing conference championship games? Because it's what you do. Doesn't mean you can't change that up either. I don't understand the conference champion among whoever is left among the Power 3, 4, or 5, or 2 not getting an automatic qualifier for winning that game. It makes no sense to me. But I say it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me that that would be the case. I get why people would fight against it.
Well, and again,
if you're the big bad SEC, what are you worried about whether you're conference champion 7 and 5 or not?
You're the SEC is not the one who was worried about it.
They're the ones that don't want an automatic qualifier as a conference champion. Sankey has made it clear he does not want automatic qualifiers from a conference champion.
Yeah, the Big Ten does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why would the SEC be afraid of their conference champion not getting an automatic qualifier?
That's why I agree with them and disagree with the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The Big Ten is preparing for a scenario with tinfoil hats on, being like, our conference champion might not be in the top 6. Okay. So that happens one time.
I asked the question to the chat room. Okay.
But the SEC is like, look, Greg Sankey's like, we don't care. Because Greg Sankey also knows, like, I will bend the rules or make the rules to benefit us. So say whatever you want. I'm still the loudest and strongest voice in the room.
Do you think the conference champion, if it goes to 8, 12, 16, should get an automatic qualifier?
Not necessarily. I like the plan that there was. Top 5 or top 6 ranked conference champions, and then after that, the other 6 are...
No, you just said conference champions.
Yeah, but they're not. They're ranked conference champions.
Okay.
So if the 7 and 5 team wins...
But they're 23rd in the country.
Then that could be an issue. I need somebody to tell me why it makes sense.
So let's go win the SEC, celebrate for about 30 minutes, have the stage, and then go to the whatever it's called anymore, like a bowl game that, like the Independence Bowl.
Yeah, because and what Greg Sankey is trying to make is he's trying to make sure that inevitability, he doesn't get the team caught, that was 12-0, loses to a 7 and 5 team on their worst day.
They would be in. They're going to get in.
But if they fell to 7, then they're going to get in. But like that's what it is. So.
We asked the chat room.